and welcome to Virtual Day Trip to Wine Country, presented by Citi. I am your grateful host, Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events, and we are looking forward to a great session this evening. We are going back to the beautiful Sonoma County region of California. We're returning to the town of Geyserville. And as you recall from last week's broadcast, Geyserville is so named for the hot springs and steam vents discovered in a gorge in the mountains between the towns of Calistoga, which is in Napa Valley, and Cloverdale. And I thought just for kicks, it would be cool tonight to see exactly where those geysers are, because Geyserville being named after the geysers. We didn't get a chance last time to show the actual geysers that are why it's called Geyserville. So I'm going to get out of the way here. And there you see a major geyser. That one is actually on the Napa Valley side, but there are these geysers in the mountains that separate the towns of Cloverdale and Calistoga. And that is why it's called Geyserville. It is an absolutely gorgeous part of the world, as you can see from this vineyard in my background. This is the vineyard that we're going to be visiting tonight. And it's really a treat because the vineyard and the winery name is Dutcher Crossing Winery. And not only do they reside in an absolutely gorgeous part of the world, but they've developed a reputation for incredible wines, incredible hospitality, and unforgettable views. And I encourage you to check them out at DutcherCrossingWinery.com. It's a place that if you're going to be in California anytime in the near or midterm future, you need to visit. It's magical. And what they've done with the winery, the tasting room, the hospitality is incredible. I'm going to show you guys how you can find out more about Dutcher Crossing Winery. I'll get out of the way here. This is the URL for the winery. And by the way, deal spoiler alert, all the wines in the tasting this evening can be purchased online at the winery website, which you see the URL on my screen, or by phone. The phone number there as well, 707-431-2700. And if you order a case, they will take 15% off. Just make sure you mention this tasting, the New York Wine Events virtual tasting, in the comments box of your order. Not only do you get 15% off, but I love shipping deals, and there's $5 flat rate shipping on a case. And I believe that extends, I'm gonna ask our guests, but I believe that extends to ordering if you order a case of wine on the website, you get the $5 flat rate shipping if you mention the New York Wine Events promo code. So welcome everybody. I'm going to keep the intro short tonight. We'll put up that beautiful background of Sonoma Valley again, so we can see where we're coming from virtually. Please hit the Q&A tab in Zoom. If you have questions, you can ask any question along the way. We love to answer questions live, spontaneously. And also, please hit us up in the chat. If you get a moment right now, sort of at the beginning, if you can hit us up in the chat and let us know where in the world you are tuning in from. We love to see that. It's amazing. We tend to get people from all over creation who tune in. So we love to see where you're coming from. So without further ado, let's get going with Dutcher Crossing Winery. And it's my privilege today to host the winemaker from Dutcher Crossing, Nick Briggs. Nick, welcome. It's great to have you tonight on Day Trip to Wine Country.
Thank you very much, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited.
You know, I want to dive a little bit into the wines because you guys make some amazing wines. And You know, we don't always get into this with a winemaker when we do these virtual tastings and visits with wineries, but I want to have you talk a little bit about the wines and what's important to you about the wines and in making the wines.
Well, I think it's always first and foremost important that we believe in the products we're putting out there. So here at Dutcher Crossing, we don't bottle anything that we don't think is acceptable or up to our standards. And I think that's really important. We don't have to put anything out that we don't like. That doesn't mean every wine would be my favorite wine, but we do still, really believe in all of our products. And I really like that we have a strong focus on having things that are really drinkable at release. They definitely can improve with age, as hopefully all of them and all wineries really will do, but they're delicious right when we release them.
So let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of people, certainly myself included, get hung up on, well, I've bought this really great bottle of wine and I'm going to lay it down in my wine fridge and I'm not going to drink it yet. Maybe I'm going to save it for a special occasion, but also maybe like it gets better with age. But the thing that's great about just saying go for it and open the bottle is that, if it's wonderful when you get it, it's great to age it. That's fine, but you can drink it right away. And I think that's something that people, especially when it comes to really good wines and red wines that can be aged and often are, don't realize is like, you don't have to wait to taste them.
Yeah, I think it's maybe my favorite thing to tell customers who come into the tasting room when I'm lucky enough to get to interact with them. That's, age it on the front seat on the way home.
I love that. Just don't drink it on the way home.
The rules are getting kind of loose these days, but wait till you get home. But a goal for our wines for us would be, drinkable now, but being able to sell it for a little while. And we try to put some of that in our tasting notes. I would hope that most of our Zins are going to improve and soften over probably 3 to 5 years from release. And then, after that, they're kind of in their sweet spot for a few more years, depending on how much, kind of tannin and acid they really have to them. And after that, they're probably going to start to fade a little bit. But the biggest key to any wine drinker is drink what you like. If you don't like old wine, there's no reason to hold on to it for 10 years just because somebody else told you that's what to do. If you liked it when you tasted it the first time and you want to wait 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, that's fine. You don't have to wait until maybe it's hit its absolute peak, or maybe you even missed the peak and end up disappointed because of that.
So we're going to taste 5 red wines. In fact, tonight it's all Zinfandel, awesome California Zinfandels. Here's a question. What's the longest you would keep a bottle before you say, you know what, at a certain point, in any of these 5 wines, don't hold on to it for more than X year? Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Like, what's the point at which, like, you know what, you're sort of, it's going to eventually not be as good as it once was?
I think you're talking between 10 and maybe 15 years. And some of that's cellar conditions too. If they're really properly stored, at about 55 degrees or so, the wines seem to be able to handle a longer age. I think you'll see more than anything, wines more rapidly aging when they're kind of just hanging out in a house where the temperatures are going up and going down and going up and going down. That's going to make them work harder. And I think they tend to, fall apart a little sooner because of that.
Yeah. I mean, the conditions and temperature of the storage situation are key. We actually just found my wife emptied out a storage unit that she shared with her mom a couple weeks ago. It was actually in a climate controlled storage facility, but not ideal. I'm sure it goes up and down a little bit. And there was a box with a bunch of different bottles of wine and also spirits. And some of the wine survived, but some of it didn't. And it was a good 10 years it was sitting in there, you know. So that was good. That was good proof of like, you know what, we should not hold on to these too long. So talk about, you know, when we look at this gorgeous landscape and background and Sonoma County being this storied and an iconic place for winemaking, there are a whole bunch of different AVAs or American viticultural areas within Sonoma County. Much of what you guys do is Dry Creek AVA. What's the deal with Dry Creek? What makes it distinctive? What's the story with Dry Creek?
So Dry Creek's been around for quite a long time, although it's really expanded since the early 80s when they put the dam in, and they created Lake Sonoma, which actually stopped all of the lowlands from flooding every year and then drying out. The creeks would go dry and then it would flood in the winters. You know, so because of that, we've got a lot of these kind of old river bar, very fertile soils. I think one key, besides soil types, which usually are pretty distinctive for different AVAs, but is some of the really old plantings. We're going to have a couple of those today. You just don't see a lot of 100-year-old, 80-year-old vines out there anymore. Most of them have been ripped out and replanted maybe multiple times. As well as we get these really nice, cool, foggy mornings during the ripening season. But they break and then we get some really good warm weather. So we get these huge temperature swings, like 40 degrees between the high in the day, or even more, 45, sometimes even 50 degrees, and then the low at night. You know, we might see 105 and then all the way down to 50.
Wow. In one 24-hour stretch?
In 12 hours.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, that's, you know, 55-degree swing. Yeah. So old vines is one of the distinctive characteristics of the Dry Creek.
Yeah, up in the bench that didn't flood, you know, some of the original settlers were Italians, and they did a lot of these different field blends. So they would find that Zinfandel, it just grows incredibly well here. But they would want to make an interesting wine, and they would just make one wine in their cellar. And so a lot of times they would create these field blends where out in the same vineyard, they would plant multiple varietals. And so when they harvested them all at once, they would create a more diverse kind of blended wine without having to make multiple lots of wine and then try to blend them later.
Got it. So we have a first question with regard to the climate and temperatures. Does that essentially affect the grapes differently for each different block or area? I mean, are they affected differently, and does that make distinctions between how of the wine that comes from those different grapes in different spots?
Yeah, so you know, like Russian River area AVA is going to see more fog and cooler highs than say Dry Creek. Alexander Valley typically sees even higher highs but less fog, so they're going to get more intense heat for longer periods. Those big temperature swings in the fog really help for us to get this nice development of very ripe fruit characters without the grapes getting kind of cooked. And so it helps to make these very nice kind of jammy, fruity wines with hopefully without them being kind of like overdone where they're prunes and stewed fruit.
Got it. Awesome. Let's take a little tour and then let's get tasting. I'm going to ask you about blends while we're tasting, but let's jump around and take a look at your location. So if anybody's been to the website, I've got this picture in my background, which is like the main hero image on the website. So Nick, tell us about the bicycle and Dutcher Crossing Winery.
So our current owner, proprietor, Deborah Mathey, purchased in 2007, and she'd been actually on a hunt to try and find a wine to buy and operate with her dad. And he had been diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma, and he was fighting for his life. And this was the last gift that he gave to his daughter before he passed. And she later found Dutcher Crossing, and she took this bike and used it as kind of the main symbol of the winery, and a really good way to kind of recognize and show their continued journey together in the wine country.
That's great. I love that. That's a great story. So let's take a little bit more tour. I'm going to move again to a different spot so everybody can see this picture. Tell us what you're doing here in this picture.
So this is a harvest a few years ago. You can kind of see it was a little later on. The grapevines were starting to change color. We do kind of, it's the only place in California that gets any fall color. It's wine country. Everywhere else just goes brown and green. But you can kind of see there in the background, I'm actually lifted up in a cage, and I'm using a pneumatic punch down device to punch down about a 5-ton fermenter of some red fruit. I'm not exactly sure what I have there. This was a few years ago.
That's cool. What is punching down, by the way?
Okay, so we bring in the fruit and we destem it, and it all goes into these tanks. And then as fermentation starts, you get a couple of reactions. You get CO2 forming, you get heat, and you get alcohol. And the heat we control with jackets on the outside of the tank and thermostats, and we run coolant through them, and we try to maintain certain temperatures to create certain flavors through the yeast and through the grapes, as well as the tannin extraction. But the CO2 causes all the skins of the grapes to start to float. And that's where your good color and where a lot of your aromas and flavors are, is in the skins. And by doing the punch down, what we're doing is we're actually forcing all those skins back into the liquid below, and we're helping to extract all those really good flavors and colors.
So you're punching the skins back down in so that flavor and color is distributed throughout the liquid.
Right, exactly. So we're trying to make sure that we mix the tank multiple times, depending on where it is in fermentation. This looks like it's pretty mid-fermentation, so we probably did 3 of these in a day to try and make sure that we're really getting everything we can on all those yummy skins.
All right, I love our audience tonight, because we've got like really good, like specific and even technical wine geeky questions. Nancy's asking, metal tanks? You use metal tanks?
Yes, most of our fermentations are done in stainless steel tanks. Every once in a while, I will take a regular 60-gallon barrel and take the heads off and fill those with fruit and just punch them down by hand as little tiny tanks. Yep,
that's cool. And then Roger has a question here. I don't know if you can see this, Nick. I enjoy your selection of Pinots, including my favorite, Butcher. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Butcher or Booker Vineyard. What Pinot clones do you enjoy working with?
Booker is the correct pronunciation, and I think it's kind of area specific. I'd say some of my favorites are Calera 115 and 667. We also work with one called 23 that has a really incredible color to it, which is always really fun.
We'll have to do a follow-up tasting sometime soon where we cover not just the Zinfandels, which we're doing tonight, but we do Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and some of the other selections and varietals you work with.
I'd love to do that.
So moving right along on the tour, there is this fabulous winery facility you guys have. And because you have incredible hospitality, I wanted to show everybody watching this incredible tasting room. So not only breathtaking views outside, but this is one of the more beautiful design-wise tasting rooms that I've seen. I've not been there, but it looks incredible. And I think you're sitting in one part of it right now.
I am. I'm lucky enough to be sitting in that room right now. I can look to my right and I see all those glasses and that computer screen and everything. So it's wine country and Dutcher Crossing especially is a pretty fun place to come to work. You're never short on beauty.
Well, I'm coming out. I'm gonna rent an RV and I'm gonna cross the country and I'm coming out. We're gonna taste wine in the tasting room, Nick.
I can't wait.
So let's jump in. Speaking of tasting wine, I think we're gonna start. We're doing 5 awesome red Zins, California red Zins, some of my favorite wines out there. And we're starting with, I believe we're starting with the Taylor Vineyard.
Yes.
And I want to put up on the screen for everybody to see what the bottle looks like. Let's see, there it is. All right, so this is what a Dutcher Crossing Winery bottle looks like, and this is the Taylor Zinfandel. Nick, what are the tasting notes? What's the I think the retail on this one is Ollie, I don't have the retail on this one. What's the retail on this one?
I believe it's right around $50. It's my worst part of working in the winery is I never know what we're selling anything for, and I'd sell it all for free anyway.
Yeah. All right. So what are the tasting notes, and what's a great pairing for food with this wine?
I think Zinfandel in general, goes really well with chicken and pork, pretty much anything on the barbecue. This one is one of our lighter, more fruity Zins. I think you get this really nice red fruit and concentrated. There's also a lot of that nice black pepper and a really good kind of floral character to it as well. Coolest part about this vineyard, it's called the Taylor Vineyard Century Block because these vines are over 100 years old. This is an actual historic vineyard here in Dry Creek that the vines are really old school. They're little bush vines that the owners actually call prayer vines because they say it's easier to just get down on your knees to work on them than anything else.
That's awesome. All right, so that is the Taylor Zin. Quick note and a question from Steve. In his experience with the Dutcher Crossing wines, he's had ones that are pretty high, especially the Zins in the alcohol range, 15% or so. Do you have any, is there any sort of intention to lower those at all? Is that really not possible just because of the process and the fermentation with Zin? But like, I don't mind the high alcohol content, but obviously you have to go a little easier on those. What's the story on that?
Yeah, Zinfandel naturally wants to get a little higher in alcohol. The bunch comes in, you tend to have little green berries next to very full, plump, ripe berries next to raisins. And those raisins really hide the sugar. So we look at all of our numbers when the fruit comes in, and we try to adjust to target, between about 14.7 and 15.1 in alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to enjoy that range because of the kind of viscosity that you're going to create with those alcohol levels. When you get a little bit lower, you tend to get a little bit thinner feel and not quite mouthfeel to the wine. So that's one of the reasons.
It's a byproduct of the characteristic of the wine. All right, let's move on to the proprietors. This is the 2016 Proprietors Reserve Zinfandel, Dry Creek Valley. It's a blend, and it's $33, I believe, in the shop on DutcherCrossingWinery.com.
So to me, this one's really going to display a little bit more classic Dry Creek notes. You've got a little bit more of the purple fruits, a little bit more blackberry, that good black pepper. We use American oak on this one, so you're going to get sometimes some more of that like kind of graham cracker and a little bit of baking spices that come through. And then food pairing wise, again, I mean, I'm looking at something off the grill, maybe rack of ribs, crusted up pork loin. Not something with a ton of fat, but it can handle something maybe with a little more spice to it.
Yep. Let's see, we have a couple of questions here. So Nancy's asking, are these first two wines, are they on the dry side or are they on the fruity side?
Um, hmm. All there's two ways to think about that. I think from the winemaking side, when I talk about a dry wine, we're talking about how much sugar's left in it. And all of these are fermented down to very small amounts of sugar, nothing that I would consider to be sweet, like you might find in like a sweet wine or port or something like that. The first two are definitely going to be a little more fruity, and then as we progress through the tasting today, they're going to get a little bit bolder, they're going to get a little more tannin and structure, and those are wines that you may want to wait a little bit longer, hold on to them for that 3 to 5 years instead of maybe 1 or 2 before you drink. And when you do that, then those tannins that seem a little dry are just going to soften and integrate, and that dryness kind of doesn't seem to be there anymore. The tannin chains actually elongate, and then they lay on your tongue instead of filling in the receptors. And so instead of having a cat tongue, you get this really nice mouthfeel.
Yeah, no, those ones with more structural age really nicely. By the way, for everybody watching, hit us up in the chat and let us know if you have not ever had a California Zinfandel, because I will tell you that the thing that 15 plus years ago got me excited about wine and got me sort of into the wine industry was somebody gave me a bottle of California Red Zinfandel. I'd never had it before. It absolutely was life-changing. I'd never tasted a wine like that. I was blown away. And I continue to this day to have, tremendous affection for and liking for these California Red Zins, because they're absolutely delicious. It's probably the most underrated wine in America. There's a lot of great wine here, and certainly California makes a lot of great wine, from Chardonnay to Cabernet Sauvignon most famously. But if you have not had the California Zin, like, hit us up in the chat. I mean, these are special wines. All right, so let's move on to the next one, which I believe is the Bernier. And that is another Zinfandel. Here it is. Okay. Nick, tell us about this one and what are the tasting notes and food that it would go with. It's this is a retails for how much?
How much?
Yeah.
Let me find out. Hey Ryan, how much is the Bernier? I'm asking our tasting room manager. 42? 48. Thank you for your patience.
So real quick, Jackie and Allison. Well, Allison is a veteran of these. Jackie, you have to try these California Zins. And I no better place to start than Dutcher Crossing Winery. Just plainly put. All right, Nick, what's the tasting notes on this Bernier?
Okay, so what's cool about this one, this is our first example that we have here of what we call a field blend. So actually out in this vineyard, there's planted 4 different grapes. You've got Zinfandel, you've got Carignan, Petit Syrah, and Mataro, which is the Spanish clone of Mourvedre. That's only helpful if you know what Mourvedre is too. What that means, and what I mean by a field blend, is they're all just growing together. And when we go to harvest, all these grapes, all 4 varietals, get picked on the same day. They come in the same boxes, they go in the same tank, and they're co-fermented. So this is a wine that's truly made and blended in the vineyard. Another thing that's neat about this one, head trained, dry farm. You don't see a lot of dry farming throughout America, and especially in California. You're going to get lower yields because of that. They have to have a little bit more spacing, and the farmer's really got to know what he's doing to make sure that they can keep their grapevines alive and producing, especially a quality product, without irrigating. I mean, they only get the water that falls out of the sky. Tasting notes. This is always one of our staff favorites. I love it because of all those varietals, you get a really big, diverse flavor palette. You get some nice red fruits, you get some nice jammy fruits. You're going to get a really good kind of floral and earthy character from the Mourvedre. And then I think this one, it's maybe a little bit lighter in the pairing. You could even go like salmon. You could definitely go chicken, especially like herb crested chicken or lemon chicken would probably even be good. Well, I might go Chardonnay with that. But this one always has just the most incredible notes and so many layers to it. Sometimes it's a little confusing to people because of all the other stuff in there. It doesn't always speak to everyone as Zinfandel, but I think that this is really a throwback to what was originally happening here in Dry Creek 100 years ago.
That's very cool. Quick question from Allison. Is there an advantage to co-fermenting rather than blending later?
Good question. There's advantages and disadvantages. The hardest part about this is that you're calling a pick of 4 different things all on the same day. So we're trying to wait for the Zinfandel to not be too ripe while the Carignan and the Mataro are ripe enough. So that's a challenge. I think that the advantage is you get really early integration of the tannins, and a wine has a very nice seamless feel to it. Sometimes when you ferment things separately and try to blend them later, they just don't want to work together. And it seems to be that when they're growing in that same field together and really start off in the tank together, that you get an extra level of integration early on.
Cool. All right, I've switched up my screen to have the Maple Vineyard Bill's Block Zin, Dry Creek Valley in the background. 2017, $48 a bottle. Is it just me, or is this bottle, does the wine look even darker and deeper in color from looking at this bottle? By the way, this is Steve's favorite. Steve's watching, and he's a big fan of the maple. Me
too, Steve. This is the Bernier is really pretty, and this is kind of the antithesis of that. This is our biggest, probably jammiest wine. This is a 1940 planting from the famed Maple Vineyard. It's only about 25 acres, all head trained dry farm Zinfandel. And then this is a little 1 acre block that we get that also has some Petit Syrah and some Carignan. And then there's actually a couple other vines out there too. There's a Ruby Cab, a couple Alicante Boucher, that they're so small that we don't include them on the label. But this is kind of the more kind of expected, I guess, big over the top, a little bit more jammy, fruity wine. We let this one get a little bit riper. It does help to push that ripeness. So in the glass, you're going to get more dark purple fruits, blue fruits, a lot of spice to it. But that Carignan does bring a nice acid to the wine, so there's a really good follow through. And then, we age this in a little bit of French oak just to get those nice soft tannins to integrate and create a really nice round feel to it.
And what's the perfect food? You get to choose one food and you never get to drink this wine again. What are you going to pair it with?
Ooh, I'm probably going smoked pork butt, pulled pork sandwich with coleslaw, like all in one.
I love it.
That's I'm happy right there.
You know what I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with made from scratch wood-fired pizza.
Oh, I like it. What are you putting on top?
I'm putting soppressata. I'm putting like real Italian charcuterie, real pepperoni on top.
Nice. That sounds delicious.
The kind that curls up when it goes in a 1,000-degree oven, wood-fired.
I love it.
That's what I'm doing. But to me, this is, as Steve says, it's a fruit bomb. Like, I love the jam and just the hugeness of this. Like, just bring in the aircraft carrier. To me, this is like heaven.
Yeah, jar it up and put it on your toast in the morning,
Yeah. All right, excellent. So let's move on to number 5, which is the Brothers Reserve. And I don't think I have the right picture up. Bear with me 1 second. There it is. Okay, Brothers Reserve. We saved the brothers for last.
Right.
$40 in the Dutcher Crossing Winery.com store. What's the story with this one, Nick?
A couple of years back, Deborah tasked me with making a zin and a blend that she could say represented her brother. She has 2 older brothers who live back in Wisconsin, and they both like to argue that that they're the good-looking brother and that this wine's for them. But what we wanted to do was this is a blended wine, but I got to kind of cherry pick all our different lots, and I'll pull a little bit of maple in. I'll pull from any of the vineyards and things that we have, and so we'll blend in a pretty hefty portion of Petit Syrah and a pretty hefty portion of Mourvedre every year. And the idea was kind of thinking a little bit more leather, armchair, cigar. Not that that's necessarily what you're coming through, but a little bit more masculine and a little bit more dark and brooding.
That's great. That's awesome. And so what would you ideally put this with as a food pairing?
I think this could go even bigger. You could start working into your red meats for sure. Maybe some venison, or I think you could even go with a ribeye with this. I mean, there's definitely enough to it to hold up to a steak. Nice.
That's awesome. So now the question is, how do we get these wines? And the quick answer is you go to this URL that's on my screen right now, DutcherCrossingWinery.com. And
yeah, you can go on there. You can email us. You can call. I mean, we answer that phone most of the time if we're not too busy. But everybody's really responsive.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to put words in Becky's mouth, but I think that the code, mentioning this tasting, and the flat rate $5 shipping, which is amazing on a case of wine. It costs probably $40 to ship a case of wine anyway, from California to anywhere else in the U.S. I think it applies to all your wines, not just these 5 Zinfandels, I believe.
Yeah, I believe that they'll honor that for anything anybody wants to purchase because of this tasting.
So if you're so inclined to do a case, you could get a couple bottles of the Chardonnay, a couple of bottles of Pinot Noir, etc., and mix it up. But I do highly recommend it, and I think it's well worth kind of going back to where you're sitting, Nick, and just say, if you have not been to this part of the world or been there recently, and if you haven't been to Dutcher Crossing Winery, make your way there. These guys get the most incredible reviews and notices for the experience at their place, and it's really God's country. So, and by the way, if you are interested in getting a case, Steve has pointed out that you will like any of the Dutcher Crossing wines, not just the Zinfandels. So
for sure. And if you have questions, call in or contact our staff. They're all super knowledgeable. So if there's something you're looking for, or type of wine that you really like, or something that you don't like and you want to steer clear of, just contact us, and we'd be happy to help you put together a case that you're really going to love.
So we're going to wrap up with a couple of comments and questions. And I want to just thank everybody for being an awesome audience and sending in your thoughts and questions and comments. Just wanted to share that Nancy, hi Nancy, has not had a Dutcher Crossing wine, but is looking forward to getting some. That's why she's been asking all these questions, she says. So Nancy, no worries. We want you to ask questions. And then Arlene has a really good question. I love this question. What is a good price point for Zinfandel? Nick, I'm going to kick that one to you. I mean, there's a couple of answers I can think of, but what's a good price point for Zinfandel?
Due to where we are and the rarity of some of the wines we get, I think, you know, some of the ones that we've looked at today are probably at the higher end of the Zinfandel spectrum. I mean, $50 is not a cheap bottle of wine by any means, but, you know, you're getting very small lots, you know, like most of them are around 300 cases. So, you know, you're buying a very small piece of the world there. Probably the best value is going to be the Proprietor's Reserve. Especially if you're getting a little bit of a discount there. And I saw Steve's thing pop up there. Yeah, I mean, 15 to 65, you know, that's definitely in the range. I think one thing that, you know, keeps us unique is we're not, we're really all direct. We're not really distributed. We're not really in a grocery store. So these are really small lot handcrafted wines. And I actually think I argue with the owner all the time that we don't charge enough.
Well, you have to make it commercially practicable and viable. But I will say, Arlene, I agree with Steve and with Nick, 15 to 65 bucks. But when you're talking about the quality level of these wines, the Dutcher Crossing wines, like that $33 for the Proprietor's Reserve Zinfandel, I mean, that's a wine that will it'll make your night. It'll make the dinner, wherever you have it, it will complete that experience. And so there's just a certain level that these California Zins get to. And when they're at that relatively modest sort of mid-price, grab them. And when something's only 300 cases in production, it's rare stuff. It's not mass produced. I mean, you know, how many cases does Meiomi make a year, Nick? 1 million? You know, I mean, it's artisan wines versus factory made wines, right? So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Nick, I want to share with you that Roger says you're a rock star. And I would agree. Thank you so much for being a part of this, Nick, and to the Dutcher Crossing Winery team. Great to do this. We'll do it again when we do the whole portfolio from all the different types of grape varietals and selections.
I really look forward to that. Thank you all so much for coming and tuning in, and thank you, Steve, Sam, for having me. Cheers.
Likewise. Cheers to all. We'll see you on the next one.